What's hey, I didn't know the Communist Party made a comeback.
Yeah, we've seen like an explosion of growth over the last 5 years.
That's interesting. I'm
we
a capitalist pig, but I want to hear what.
we have.
I'm
we have
interested.
about 11,000 members nationwide.
Okay.
We're in Chicago. We restarted YCL, the Young Communist League.
Okay.
We're on our way. We're actually right now we're discussing next steps. My comrades would be good guys to talk to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what do you guys represent and everything? A lot of controversy with that. I'm interested.
We're officially we represent the Communist Party of the United States, which is a fraternal organization in the international meeting of communist and workers' parties, as well as a couple other international organizations. So we're definitely an internationalist organization. We work directly with other parties in other parts of the world, including Swaziland is one of the big places we're working right now. But here in the United States and even internationally, what we do is we represent the proletariat. We represent the working common person. Effectively, especially in the late stages of capitalism that we're experiencing now, we represent the working poor. We represent the common interests of egalitarianism and equality across the world, especially in a fiscal and economic sense.
All right, it's interesting. So what makes you think communism would work in the United States where it's failed in other places? It's kind of been somewhat successful in some. What makes you think it would work?
The accomplishments of communism, I think, when you just kind of sort of call communism a failed system,
I don't know that it's right to say communism failed.
I know some people believe that it's never been actually achieved.
It was certainly insufficient.
It has been achieved.
Has it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When the Bolsheviks took power, we, as the Communist Party, we are by definition Marxist-Leninists. So,
okay.
I mean, Lenin got it right.
It's important to remember, look at the statistics from the USSR, right? Especially for Russia. Soviet Russia beforehand was a czarist, feudalist, struggling land. Very, very, very poor serfs who were forced to work land that was owned by the lords and the gentry, the various, nobility of the Russian system. That was overthrown, and the people were put in charge of their own state, their own resources, and their own economic planning.
And I think it's important to note that before the Russian Revolution, in Russia in particular, the life expectancy was 33 years. At the time Stalin died, it was 68. So communism literally doubled life expectancy, and you can say
also did in China and
you can
Vietnam
say,
and
that's because of sanitation and improved child mortality rates.
Didn't Stalin kill a lot of the doctors though? Didn't he kill all the doctors? What is your guys' viewpoint on that part of history?
Stalin, I don't think anybody here is particularly authorized. We don't have. What's the word I'm looking for?
You don't have to speak if you don't want to.
We do not have authority to speak on Stalin.
That's fine, yeah. You don't have to speak on anything you don't want to.
Stalin made some mistakes. Actually, we're at this abortion rally right now. It's important.
I know a lot of
one of the big mistakes that Stalin made was banning abortion after World War II.
Stalin was not perfect
in 1955.
He also made some bad mistakes because he had to sacrifice him. Like when they tried getting rid of the control of churches, he had to reverse that because the churches were helping the Nazis in World War II, and he had to make them start allying with him instead. And he had to go back on some things, and that's one of his failures. But the thing is, you need to know when you accept and have to come to terms that sometimes you need to fail and learn from that. And that's what happened.
Learn what not to do?
Yeah, because sometimes not everything works out. But you have to be the bigger person and learn from those and acknowledge them and admit it to people. And that's what he did. And later down the line, he worked on that more after the war.
I have a question. So in communist countries, in the past, there's been a lack of freedom. Like, how would you correct such things and make it fair?
I mean, we have
that's debatable.
Bourgeoisie democracy in this country. In the United States, democracy has become something that means my ignorance is just as valid as your knowledge, and it's not. It is not. If you want to believe the world is flat and teach children that is not on par with the science saying that the world is not flat. Ignorance is not as valid as knowledge, and that is what democracy has become. Bourgeoisie democracy, as we have in this current system.
Can democracy be successful? Or a democratic republic of some sort?
Socialism by nature is totally democratic because it's worker-owned control of the production. So when the workers take control of the factory, that is democratic. But when you have a boss or a CEO, that is a dictatorship. They're telling you what to do and you do it, and that's not democratic. So to argue that we have a democracy here is just not true, and socialism is inherently democratic.
So you feel like the boss as some sort of a similar to a dictator.
If you read the Communist Manifesto, one of the central ideas laid out in the Communist Manifesto is, let's say somebody hires you to build a chair, and they pay you $100 to build that chair, and they then sell that chair for $200. Society has agreed that the value of the labor you did building that chair is $200, not the $100 you were paid. So the $100 that the guy who hired you gets is called surplus labor, and it's theft. When the workers own the means of production, that surplus labor disappears, and the labor that you do, you then receive the value, the full value.
Okay.
But surplus labor is one of the defining characteristics of this quote democratic capitalist system that we have now. Is theft from the workers.
Democracy in itself can succeed, but in our country over time, we've let richer people gain more control over things. As back then, people paid less taxes, they had to do things differently as compared to today.
We get screwed over on taxes too a lot.
That's it exactly.
Well, rich people nowadays have more control over everything.
I could agree with you guys on that. Yeah, the tax system's messed up.
Everyone wants to say the rich are bad people, but when you have Mark Zuckerberg controlling what can and can't be said on Facebook and other things, that in of itself is not a good thing. In democracy, you can get rich, you can do these things, but when you let them go unchecked and not give them certain rules, it gets bad. That's what happened to America. We didn't stop them in the 50s and 60s, as our elders like to say, was a good time. It was because the rich were forced to pay more things, and they were forced in their place. But then later on, they gained power and started changing everything in the government.
Could it be that you guys are looking for a new kind of communism?
I mean, every country builds their own communism. Socialism is a house you have to build yourself, and you can have blueprints, but it's ultimately the construction of the house that's important and what really matters.
Just make sure it's still filmed. Sorry.
No, you're good. As my comrade was saying, each country is unique and has its own unique needs. You cannot compare the needs of people in the United States to the needs of people in Belarus, the workers. The proletariat is what I'm saying. You cannot compare the needs of the two. So each country needs to build its own particular brand of communism. We have the foundations there, but ultimately it is what the workers in this country decide.
Very, 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 very interesting. Yeah. I'm a free market capitalist for sure, but I definitely could it's nice that we could come to agree on some things, and have a healthy civil debate.
My boss is a very, very big Trump voter. Very pro-Trump.
Fascinating.
We're able to have a civil discourse and still have a mutual respect for each other. So just because we disagree, that doesn't inherently make us enemies, despite what the people in charge would have you believe, because the political climate in this country right now, if you're on the left when somebody's on the right, you're supposed to hate each other. That racism, homophobia, this anti-women fervor that we're here today protesting, that is all an invention of the ruling class to keep us divided and fighting each other so that we don't get together and fight them, as happened in Russia in 1917.
You guys are the probably the most rational group of communists I've ever met, because I don't view communism as a rational philosophy, but we could come. But I didn't know that we could come to agree on certain things. You know, that's why I'm happy I'm here.
If you look into Adam Smith, right, one of the original theoreticians of free market capitalism, right? This is basically the guy that Britain based its commerce system off of. There is one thing he absolutely hated more than anything else in the world, and that is the rent collecting class. That is the idea of landlordship. It is a relic of feudalism that destroys even the functionality of capitalism, right? With people who obtain their living, obtain their earning, their income by not producing anything, by collecting off of the work of others. It's a drain on the economy, and it always is, whether it's a capitalist or socialist economy. It's always a drain to have social parasites like that.
Yeah. You could have a little bit of both. You could have a mixed economy where there's some capitalism, some socialism. Places have done it.
Yeah, you can find ways to make that work. A lot of folks are mad about China figuring out that sort of path.
Well,
There's
see,
a lot of-
China.
what's on purity.
I don't
Remember.
think China's communist anymore. I think they move more towards totalitarian
Well, what's
fascism.
important to remember is that
In
socialism
my
is
opinion.
an economic system and communism is a political system. You can pigeonhole socialism into any political system. There is monarchy. You could put socialism into. So socialism does not necessarily mean the end of the political system that we have today.
A lot of
That's why we take it
Republicans,
to the next level and say communism.
A lot of Republicans believe in, Social Security benefits and protecting, and that's a pretty socialist belief. There's a lot more Republicans that believe in free health care too, and that's or Medicare for all, and that's a pretty socialist belief.
I think it's important to realize that as communists, we represent the working class.
In the interests of the workers.
I'm the working class, so that's nice to know. You guys got our backs.
Yeah, and
We will fight and die for the working
yes.
class. We hope to God it doesn't come to that, but if necessary,
I'd die for my country.
all of my comrades. And my grandfather fought in World War II. He was part of the first wave in Luzon, the liberation of the Philippines. And a lot of people say to me, like, how do you reconcile that? And I say, my grandfather fought shoulder to shoulder with the communists, and together they defeated the greatest evil this world has ever seen. So there is no inherent necessity for the United States to be at odds with any communist country. When we worked together, we defeated the Nazis and the Japanese Empire, which I think, I can't speak for anyone else, but I have a feeling a lot of people would agree with me when I say, like I said, the greatest evil this world has ever known.
The diplomatic approach is interesting. How do you feel about a lot of people say Putin's trying to bring back like the Soviet Union and stuff. I don't know enough
Communist,
about
any stretch
I think he's a capitalist. He's a crony.
He is,
Steals.
the Communist
My dad
Party
would
is not-
disagree with you.
The Communist Party is not.
We had an argument.
In no way do we endorse Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's important to
That's good to know.
realize,
He's a monster.
within Russia, the latest Duma elections, or parliament basically, the Communist Party gained more seats than any other party, and the far-right parties lost seats. So even within Russia, like the Communist Party still exists and is still fighting.
It's the second largest political party in Russia.
So
And
would
they're growing.
the long-term goal to be like to replace the Democrat Party or be like some kind of a majority third party?
Oh, I want that one. The long-term goal is to absolutely replace the idea of Democrats and Republicans, to put working people in charge. So this is what it means when we talk about the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is where a lot of people jump off board and start to get scared, right? Now, dictatorship
Kinda
means
scary.
Dictatorship means absolute consolidated power, right?
Okay.
Completely in one spot. Now, the proletariat, however, means the entire working class. The individual form of proletariat is proletarian. That means one worker. Proletariat is the working class. So to completely consolidate all power into the entirety of the working class. So what we want is to put workers in control of this country, of their country. The people who clock in every single day and build this place and make it function the way that it does. they should be the ones who own and control the direction that this country goes and what it
People
produces.
who work in the factory should own the factories. The
That-
people who work on the farm should
The
own
people
the
who
farm.
pay the
That's
taxes should
interesting.
decide how the taxes get spent.
But should some people be able to have things like wealth? Because it creates, at some point it can create an imbalance
there's
where
a
the rich become become the working class, and then the working class becomes the rich, and then it's like, oh, we're back to square one again, and then communism doesn't work.
The idea of putting the working class in charge and distributing wealth in an egalitarian fashion so that everyone has an equal share is that it will abolish classes. There won't be a rich and poor, it'll be a homogenous society of people who have equal opportunity, equal access to resources, and equal chances to do what they want. Now the thing that starts to work is because people just fundamentally want to do different things.
Yeah.
Some people want to live in the country, some people want to live by the beach, some people want to live in Chicago in a skyscraper. People want to do different things. So if you just let people do what they want and fundamentally equip them with the resources that they need, right? Because right now you said we have freedom, right?
Yeah.
You have the freedom to afford whatever you want to do. But if you can't afford it, you don't have the freedom to do that. You can't, if you don't have rent, you don't have the right to a house. If you don't have money for medical care, you don't have rights to see a doctor. You don't have the freedom to be treated for your illness. You have the freedom to earn the amount you need to pay for it, is the freedom that you have.
We believe in what's called Bill of Rights socialism, which means at its core that the Bill of Rights was intended to, they didn't have the word socialism at the time, but was intended to put everybody on a level playing field. And that we then need to go back and revise what the changes that have been made to the Constitution, or the interpretations thereof, have gotten us to where we are. Citizens United. Money is not speech. I'm sorry, it's just not. So, in our ideal society, yes, it would be, as my comrade
it can
was
be
saying,
used to back people you support, but it is a flawed system, because then you got these super PACs and these rich motherfuckers, and they put all their money towards like the most croniest dude,
Because it's not just their wealth, it's the fact that they work together.
Yeah.
The wealthy, right, have class solidarity. They understand that, you know what, I own Apple and you own Microsoft, and we're rivals, we're competitors, but fundamentally we want the same thing. We want everyone to buy a new cell phone every year. That is what we both want, right? And they have solidarity in that action, so they work together to push towards that agenda. The same thing happens with PACs and super PACs and what have you. Rich people fundamentally want lower wages, right? They want lower taxes. You know the usual shtick. They all want that, and they all work together for those things. And it's that unity, that solidarity that gives them power. And there's absolutely no reason the working class can't do the same thing.
We need to break away monopolies. That's
that
a
goes
big,
back, what my
big
comrade
starter.
was just saying, is that goes back to what I was saying about racism, homophobia.
I don't think what you guys, and I don't mean to label or anything, you guys are free to believe, or whatever you want, but I don't view, a lot of your beliefs I don't view as communist. I view as well-regulated capitalism.
Them as radical.
As
none of our ideas are that radical.
they're not like, it's not radical
Most
communism.
people inherently have, but what's radical is the oppression of our ability to achieve socialism by the capitalist class.
People in this country do not understand what communism means. You just said you don't see us as communists, when that is inherently what communists believe. In the United States, we have been taught that anything I don't understand and don't like is communism. No, what we are laying out to you is communism.
Well, just like with any group of people, there are arrogant individuals, and I've seen a lot of that on not your group in particular. I don't know enough about, but you guys seem really cool though. It's very civil, but there's a lot of violence in some history of violence in a lot of communist movements.
Violence in every political party. There's a difference
Yeah.
in people that don't want to acknowledge that, because everyone wants to think Democrats were the good guys all the time, and same with Republicans, and then same with the Libertarians.
But is it fair to say that, to some degree, though, communism is it's responsible for the more deaths than religion. I mean, religions cause a lot of deaths too.
I don't think that's
I mean,
fair
so is capitalism.
Fair to say at all.
They all have,
that
but
really famous quote.
I looked at a statistic
Without
recently,
religion, you have
and
good people doing good things and bad people doing bad things.
I think the reason why not a lot of people in our country knows what communism really is because from the deep part of it, it's our school education system was built to be anti-communist during certain times. And not only that, we live in a society that now spams that communism is this and it's bad. And that engraves itself into people. Because from a young age, kids are told communism is bad, and they're shown only the bleak bad things. And then they glorify all the great things America's done, but don't want to acknowledge it. And that's even coming today during the critical race theory stuff. They don't want us seeing the things our country's done bad.
There has been good things that communists have done, like like they defeated helped defeat Nazi Germany.
Well,
they
in of
defeat
itself,
Nazi Germany.
our society in of itself right now just
The Soviet
divides
Union
what
would
it
have
really
won that
is.
war one way or the other.
On its own, yeah.
The Americans
probably right
shortened
about
the
that.
war and saved a lot of Soviet lives, but one way or another, Hitler was doing just fine in his little fascist world until he tried to fight his way through 11 time zones of Joseph
He fucked
Stalin.
over the wrong people.
That's
and he was originally the Soviets sided with the Russians or with the Nazis, I believe.
Well, they did.
Originally,
Sorry.
and then they flip flopped.
That's not
The Nazis flip
true.
flopped,
It's not probably true.
and they screwed him over.
So before World War II, the Soviets went to Chamberlain in England and were like, we need to contain him. And Chamberlain refused. In fact, Chamberlain called the ambassador from the Soviet Union I forget the exact term, but pretty much a sneaky little Jew. Chamberlain said that.
And it's not just that.
I'll get you in a sec.
No, you're fine, man.
And America was the same way. I mean, there was a whole give Adolf a chance movement in the media in the U.S.
There was a Nazi rally
American
in
Balloon.
in California, I believe.
The event in New York.
The Bund, yeah. The German American Bund, but the BUND, that was the
that happened
the
in New
American
York.
group of Nazis.
And then you have things like Hitler idolized Henry Ford, and
Walt
they
Disney.
had several American companies that helped rearm Germany when they were supposed to be disarmed after World War I. So, and then when you put all of the context in place, and you think about the Soviet Union, well, the Americans and the Western capitalist plan was to allow Nazi Germany to invade the Soviet Union. That was their plan. They wanted that to happen. And so then if you're the Soviet Union, well, you're going to have to fight them at some point. And I mean, the Poles got fucked over because they were in between fascism and the Soviet Union. I mean, it's tragic, and ultimately
It must have been a weird spot to be back and forth between two different systems.
Exactly, but the fighting in Poland was not the fault of the Soviet Union.
That's interesting. There's a lot of.
Soviet-Nazi relations are more complicated.
Yes.
It's very complicated. Like, I'm not a historian. Like, there's. Guy, if you asked a historian, none of us would even be qualified. I mean, I don't know if you guys are historians, but.
And they also tried
I'm educated in history, I'll put it that way. I
I'm
don't want to get
educated.
into specifically what I do for a living, but
I'm not educated enough, but I try to be.
It's
fair.
Hey, I gotta say,
It's a tough one.
The people who come and ask us questions, you are one of the more open-minded and I dare say fair people who have come to us. Because I mean,
Any
see the
voice,
flag.
anytime. That's my motto.
Yeah?
Yeah. Anywhere.
Let me give you this. This is my personal business card. If you have any follow-up questions
Yeah.
or anything, shoot me an email.
Yeah, if I'm ever in Chicago, we could do an interview or something, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good talking to you guys, and God bless.
Hey, we
I don't know. I
appreciate,
don't know if you
you
guys believe in
stopping by
God,
and
but still, God bless. You know, can't hurt.
That's we don't really have a stance on that. That's every member's own
every
personal view.
individual has the right to religious belief.
I think Christianity is somewhat socialist because the church is like if you think of it as a commune. I mean, it is a collective ideology to help the community.
There's a very famous
to a
quote.
degree.
Are socialists.
There's a famous quote by
And I agree with that form of socialism for sure. You
the
know,
name is escaping me.
Private
the guy who
socialism.
said this, but he said, "I'm Christian. That obliges me to be a communist."
That's interesting.
And I think in America historically, I think it was the Quakers, right?
Yeah.
The Quakers were American religious socialists.
Yes.
And that's the first group to say no to the slavery.
The Quakers were famously anti-slavery.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
and you have Arab socialism. I forget was it socialism?
Iran is a
Mossadegh, is that his name?
is Iran a socialist nation?
Well, as we were saying, socialism is an economic system. Communism is a political system. You can fit socialism into any other political
And you can
system.
socialize industries within capitalism.
Yeah.
And we already did.
I'm new at this. I'm learning, guys.
Yeah.
You could tell I'm a noob.
Popular with,
Everyone's learning all the
Well,
time.
shoot me an email and I will send you some literature. Well, I'll email you where to find some stuff.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. You know what I call it? The church and everything. I call it when communes too is another good example. I call it private communism, privatized communism.
Never heard
And I
that. but
believe
like that.
we should establish more of those. Like, if people want to live in a capitalist country, but some people don't want to live. Some people want communism. Why not? Allow them to have plots of land to build stuff.
That is ultimately our goal.
That's interesting. That'd be an interesting concept.
You cannot have capitalism without slavery. My comrade here said it best once when we were talking about the American Civil War, and he said the slave owners. You know about the slave owners?
Yeah. There's a lot of misconception about the American Civil War and what it was. People think that slavery was ended by the American Civil War, but it wasn't. The industrial slaveholders of the North, from the textile mills, won over the agricultural slaveholders of the South.
The American Civil War was a battle between agricultural slave owners and industrial slave owners.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, they didn't get paid very much back then. Especially the
Arguably,
Irish.
they still don't get paid very
I'm
much.
Irish, so Irish got fucked over a lot.
I'm a member of a group called Tribute to the Irish POWs, and we do a lot of fundraising for the
A quarter Irish. But
we do a lot of fundraising for
American.
the prisoners in Northern Ireland and their families. The Communist Party and that other group are independent of each other. I do work for both.
Okay, so that's interesting. I would like to talk more about that. I don't got all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got bust, man.
But no, hey, it was wonderful meeting you, man.
Yeah, it was
Shoot me an
wonderful.
email if you'd like any more.